It is one thing to expect troubles, but another one to stand face to face with them and realize just how minuscule one's expectations were in comparison to the real thing. When Cart Logistics embarked on their forced mission away from the core sectors, pretty much every crew member in the fleet expected something to go wrong. But no one, not in their wildest dreams, expected the scale of the situation they found themselves in. Finding remnants, sentient machines created long ago by Tritakian Corporation, was bad enough, but witnessing their handiwork firsthand was more than some people could take. As soon as the fleet arrived in the Thorax system, they detected an entire field of debris, as if dozens of starships were ripped to shreds. Some of them were remnants themselves, and their cold, lifeless husks now drifted slowly through the void, but the vast majority belonged to the Ludic Church, and remains of their crews littered the sky all around the jump point. Some of the Ludics in the fleet, with Brother Jesselton at the forefront, demanded that the fleet should stop and gather the corpses so that they could be given their last rites. Understandably, Mr. Cart refused, and after Jesselton repeated his demand, he and his fellow believers were restrained and threw in the brig, before their misguided spiritualism caused even more troubles. "Poor bastards," Mr. Cart said, staring at the scene of destruction on his sensor console. "Look how these wrecks are arranged. It looks like they were trying to escape and were spooling up their jump drives when remnants fell on them from all directions. No wonder they got obliterated. They had no chance to do anything here." "And yet they still managed to take a few of the machines with them," Zala said from her ship. "Maybe Lud was watching over them, though not nearly enough." "At least they took down enough of them to give us a chance. There's only a handful of remnant ships left, and it looks like some of them are inactive. Probably going through some self-repairs." "I hope you don't plan on trying to attack them, Chief. Even with their small numbers, I don't like our chances, and the fact that there are no bigger warships around doesn't necessarily mean they got destroyed. Maybe they just moved on and left this bunch here to look for stragglers." "Could be. And don't worry, Zala, I don't plan to break our silent ground. The signature jammer is working, which means we can go past them and check out the rest of the system. Looks like there are some planets there, and habitable ones at that. Maybe we'll find something, or someone there."
"You sure, boss?"
Varuna asked, surprised.
"We were told to find the pilgrims. We found them, they're floating around outside. No point risking our necks here, we should jump back and go home."
"We don't half-ass our jobs, Varuna. I thought you learned that after all these years flying with me," Mr. Cart said, disappointed. He also clearly wasn't willing to listen to his second-in-command, as he already plotted a course towards the closest planet. "And besides, don't you think something's wrong here? We were told to find pilgrims, but it feels like there's more to this place. Why were there so many of them here, for example? And so many warships at that? And how the hell do remnants come into this? Besides, we may find at least some survivors if we go deeper in. Maybe this fleet that got destroyed here distracted the machines long enough to allow others time to escape." Varuna clicked her comm and switched it to private mode.
"Boss, I know you always said you wanted to investigate these things, but your obsession is going to get us killed. You saw the sensor readings. If they jump us, we won't even poke a hole through their shields."
"Then let's hope my jammer will work," Her Superior replied and switched back to General Comm Channel. "Right then, if there's even a single survivor out there, we have to find them." And just as he finished saying that, as if in response, another channel opened up. A distant one, not aimed at them, but broadcasting in general, like shouting in the night. "And a salute teacheth us. I offer my prayer to the Lord, so that he may give me strength to smite these satanic abominations from this world. If ye be out there, Lord, giveth me a sign and direct my righteous wrath." Everyone on the breach stared at each other. There was no question. This was a member of the church, all right.
"Don't rush into the fray just yet, brother,"
Zala responded first.
"We're here to get you out of this hellhole."
"Lud's voice, the Lord, is a woman. I beg thee forgiveness, merciful one. I meant no disrespect in my daily prayers." "We're not God, man," Mr. Cart said on the comm in a gasp, as if a cross between shock and disappointment could be heard on the radio. "We were sent here by the church to find you, so get yourself together and tell us where you are, and tide beam the message at our coordinates before you drag all of the remnants into systems here." Let them come, I say, the voice continued on open channel. Let them come and face the righteous wrath of this faithful paladin. Now that reinforcements have come, we shall smite these beasts into depths of hell they came from. Lads, I think the toasters are picking up this bullshit, House said from temporary setback. They're pinging their sensors. This idiot's gonna get us all killed.
Brother, Lud approves your bravery and sacrifice, but he far more appreciates lives of his followers, Zala said, sounding far more serious than usual. That means paladins as well. I will not deny you your rightful vengeance, but if you want to enact it, we first have to join you. So, as our captain said, turn off the Whitecom and tell us where you are. And do so quietly, like the prophet set his plans to his followers before his ascension. Oddly enough, it worked. When the next message arrived, it was aimed directly at the fleet, and there was even some rudimentary encryption there. Sadly, the contents didn't really make anything clearer. Ye be right, sister. We must not allow ourselves to be found before we're ready to unleash our fury. But there be no time for idle prattle, for the satanic contraptions are at the gates. Me and me fellow holy warriors shall smite them and await your arrival. Wait, brother, tell us where you are first. Damn this idiot, he cut the comm.
Don't worry about this, Zala, Mr. Katz said. We had a lock on the origin of that transmission. It came from what looks like a settlement on the desert planet closest to us. We know where to go. Also, good job on talking him down. I was afraid for a moment he'd think we were remnants as well.
He still might. Look, Chief, you may be good at flying, but you can't really talk to religious people, so leave that part to me from now on.
The man nodded, and made a mental note to give Zala a raise. He might have had some reservations about her before, but the former Pather experience was certainly worth the money. But that was a thought for the future. For now, Cart Logistics made its way to the source of the ludic messages, and the closer they got, the more they realized just how bad the situation was down there. Blessed be the faithful who haste to aid their fellows. A message arrived next day, accompanied by sounds of explosion and gunfire in the distance. Its meaning was clear: hurry the hell up. And now that they were closer, the crews of Cart Logistics could finally see on their sensor what was going on. There were several settlements on the planet, and where was the important distinction here. Most of them were completely obliterated, turned into smoking craters or still burning wrecks. Only one area still seemed active, but most of that activity was caused by combat. A fortress-like town was built into dry cliff and was currently under siege by hundreds upon hundreds of remnant ground machines. No humanoid robots there, no face to give an enemy. Instead, the place was surrounded by automated tanks and self-propelled artillery, which pummeled the last bastions of the ludic defenders with relentless precision only computer could achieve. Most of the town was already turned to rubble, but there was a large bunker built into a cliff wall, and it was there where the paladins made their last stand. And somehow, they survived long enough for Cart Logistics to arrive in orbit, although it was clear there were barely any defenders left standing by then. Even worse, getting them out would not be easy. Chief problem, House said when they were preparing for descent. Sensors picked up at least a dozen of anti-ship missile launchers on the ground. We try to land, they'll fuck us up. If we had larger weapons, we could try and shoot them from orbit, but we can't really touch them with what we have. Understood, Mr. Cat replied. I could grab CLS harmless and try to fly it down. It's the most maneuverable ship we have.
Apologies, but that's not going to work, Herr Ludwig said from his ship. I calculate success rate at around 3%, and by success rate I still mean you'd get shot down, but you could potentially survive the crash.
Mr. Katz smiled darkly under his helmet. He certainly wouldn't survive the crash, that's for sure. Hell, he probably wouldn't even survive the descent if he was forced to perform some high-G maneuvers. But he thought if there was even a small chance to...
We could just drop a dirty bomb on them,
Varuna said from the bridge, interrupting his chain of thought.
You know, the one thing everyone back in the Corps agrees to not do. Grab a bunch of antimatter fuel pellets, superheat them and drop them right on top of the toasters. No way their missiles would be able to lock onto targets that small.
Sure, but we do that and there probably won't be anyone left down there to rescue.
You see any other alternative, boss? And I don't mean ones that involve us getting killed on the way down. Just blow the place up, Chief, Zala interjected. Don't look at me like that. It's the best choice for all of us. I saw men like that paladin down there during my time on the path. He won't live his duty no matter how difficult the situation is. Hell, if he dies, he'll probably do so with a smile on his face, believing he's part of some great plan or some other nonsense. I can break the news to him, in proper words if you want. That may be the best choice, or at least the one which puts us at the lowest risk. But what if there are others with him? Civilians, I mean. There are none. The Paladins wouldn't have allowed non-combatants on the battlefield, and what I mean by that is that they would have given them some weapons and explosives and told the citizens to fulfill their holy duty by throwing themselves at the enemy in suicidal attacks just to delay them. So if anyone's down there, it's just the soldiers, and even that may be an overestimation. We heard a few voices in the background when he contacted us before, but lately it was just silence. He may be the only one left down there. But we can't know for sure. But, to hell with this. Call him, Zala. Tell him the truth. She nodded and disconnected. A few minutes later, the comm pinged once again, this time from the surface. Our sister told me of your plan, Captain. I thank ye for it, for granting me the honour of passing in service a led great's work. If my sacrifice can bring those satanic machines down, then I am proud to serve. Praise the Lord and his prophet, Captain. Now bring the cleansing flame down and purify this world for future believers. Well, that was a bit too heroic for my taste, House said after the comm went silent. But whatever the man down there is doing seems to be attracting all the machines in the area, so if we want to blow them up altogether, now's the time. Say the word, and we'll do a drop run. Do it, Mr. Card ordered. And why do I have the feeling you did something like that before? 'Cause I almost did. The old captain used to threaten some Persean outpost with bombing, and we went through the entire pantomime of preparing it and launching a drop run. They didn't actually do it, though. I mean, if there's one thing people in the sector agree on is that dropping this shit on people is just plain wrong. Well, most of the people agree on that anyway, he added, and threw a sideways glance at Zala, who just rolled her eyes and disconnected. Pathers were indeed known to drop antimatter on military and civilian installations alike, claiming that it was divine justice by killing heretics with heretical devices. Regardless, however, the effectiveness of these makeshift bombs was truly spectacular, and terrifying to behold. Temporary setback did its run at the edge of Remnant anti-ship missile range, allowing gravity to do its work. They dropped only a handful of containers, each one shaped like a fire extinguisher about a meter tall, but the antimatter pellets inside were just a few millimeters across. The rest of the containers were filled with complicated electrochemical shielding, which prevented destabilization. But when these tanks hit the ground, that shielding fell apart, allowing the antimatter inside to escape its containment field and enter reaction with regular matter all around it. Around 3 minutes later, the entire valley where the last church outpost was vanished in a blinding explosion, which turned that entire region to ash. Even this small amount of fuel canisters was enough to create a massive crater almost 50 kilometers in diameter and evaporate everything else around. The desert sand was baked into glass for hundreds of kilometers around, so no wonder no one wanted to use antimatter as a weapon. Not because it wasn't effective, but out of fear that someone might use it right back in response. Needless to say, remnant machines in the area didn't survive the blast, and there wasn't even a molecule of them left in existence. Everyone in the fleet just stared at the crater, visible even from orbit. Some of them shivered. "Right, fireworks over, back to work, people!" Verona shouted on the general comm, waking everyone up from their daze. "Boss, the main group of combat machines has been destroyed, but there are still hundreds of them down there. Don't seem to do anything specific, looks like they're just patrolling around, but there are also some of the church outposts out there. We time it right, we could go down there when the remnants are away. Maybe we can still find some survivors for that priest." "I wouldn't count on it, but take a team anyway. There may still be something valuable down there." Unfortunately for the church, Mr. Cart was right. When Varuna and her team of brave volunteers landed their shuttles in the largest remaining settlement, they found streets and buildings filled with corpses. The machines were thorough. Each body was mutilated to an extreme extent, as if the remnants wanted to make sure no one would either recognize or try to patch up their victims. What's more, people were not only casualties. Remnant forces also destroyed every machine, every tool, every piece of infrastructure they could find, leaving behind only half-molten, empty husks of buildings. But there was one thing that they didn't care about: food. One would think that a scorching hot desert world like this one wouldn't be very fertile, but the Ludic Church was known as main agricultural power in the sector, and its people knew how to turn even a barren wasteland into a field, and most of the settlements and outposts on the planet were surrounded by crops. As a result, entire warehouses were left untouched, although without powerful refrigeration, most of that food was already rotting. Still, by the end of the day, cart logistic crews brought hundreds of cargo containers filled with all manner of delicacies to the fleet, though those delicacies were just common things like bread, fruits or meat, which were still hundreds of times better than the usual bland nutrient paste most spacers ate every day. Some of that food was immediately shared between the crews to bolster morale, but most was put under lock and key, to be sold later. Sadly, a second trip was not possible, for it seemed that the machines realized there were still some humans around, and their murderous vehicles started massing around remaining ruins. So, there was nothing to do but leave for the second desert world, which, even at a distance, looked even worse than the first one. The church must have brought tens of thousands of people there, maybe more, and it was clear that this world was far more built up than the previous one. But now, all these people and their farming and mining towns were destroyed, and hordes of automated vehicles roamed the sands, offering no chance to approach without being blasted out of the sky by hundreds of surface-to-air missiles. But there was one odd thing there, not on the planet itself, but in its orbit. A battered old cargo ship was slowly circling the planet, far enough above it to not fall down, but still descending a few meters every hour. At this rate, Herr Ludwig calculated, it would drop to the surface within a day or two, which meant there was enough time to salvage it, as it was beyond range of ground defenses. But as Cart Logistics approached it, a message suddenly came from it.
Work. Come on, you piece of shit, work. Yes, I know there are ships approaching, but they don't look like those AI ones. Please, please, please don't be pirates. Or Triattack. Please let it be someone normal for once. Now, work, you blasted garbage can!
Few confused glances were exchanged on the bridge of the CLS Second Chance, and then, in his cabin, Mr. Cart locked onto the comm channel. "If you're trying to fix the comms, miss, they're working already. We read you loud and clear. And don't worry, we're neither pirates or Triattack. We thought this wreck was drifting."
Because it bloody damn is. But screw it, so good to hear your voice, man, whoever you are. Aurora Olympus here, with what's left of my company, Olympus Construction Holding. Maybe you've heard of us? The Ludics hired us to help build their towns, but then these bloody machines came out of nowhere and killed everyone. I know it sounds crazy, but you have to believe me.
I do. We had a run-in with them before, and some of their ships are still in the system.
Ah, shit. Problem for another time then. For now, we need to get this hug going before we drop low enough for their missiles to lock onto us. And now that you're here, we may actually have a chance of doing that.
We'll see what can be done. But how the hell did you manage to escape this attack?
We didn't. Or at least most of us didn't, since there used to be 4 other ships in this company. All gone now. But we never even managed to set foot on the planet. As we were preparing for orbital descent, their fleet just appeared without any sensor readings. Church guys had some patrol ships around, but they were blown up in minutes. We tried to run, but they destroyed my other ships and took out our engines. We must have disappeared from the sensors because they left us alone after that, and we've been drifting ever since. And we saw what they did down there. Took them a week, but they hunted everyone down.
Then you got off lucky here. Right, but we can talk more later. I'm sending a shuttle with engineers and a drone to check out your engines. We'll see if we can get you flying. That, however, turned out to be easier said than done, and a few hours later, Aurora received another message. "Sorry to say it, Miss Olympus, but we won't be able to get your ship going. Quite frankly, it's a miracle you're still alive. Whatever remnant shot you with not only blew up your engines, it also almost completely cored out your reactor. Even if we had tools and materials to replace your engines, the moment you turned them on, you'd just explode. The woman, as may be expected, didn't sound too thrilled when she heard about it.
Of course, really should have seen that coming. Well, thanks for trying at the very least, Captain. Guess you can just leave us here. Shouldn't be long before we either get shot down or just fall.
Probably not, no, but maybe you and your crew would like to work for me. We have a bunch of bunks still free, and Cart Logistics is always looking for new hands.
You'd do that? We don't really have any creds we could pay you with.
Aurora sounded genuinely surprised, and no wonder. In Persean sector, help very rarely came cheap. Well, if you'd work for me, then I'd be the one paying you. Can't really offer you your own command for now, but we keep buying new ships every now and then. Until then, it's usual fare for everyone. 10 escorts per month, which means 7 after all cost deductions. No combat if we can avoid it. No personal drama if we can avoid it either. You won't ask questions? I won't ask them either.
You had me at 7 creds a month. Me and most of my lads. I used to pay this lot half of that.
Really? Then it turns out I'm generous without even knowing it. Doesn't matter, we'll send shuttles for you right away and find you some spots here. If you have any wounded, deliver them to my ship. Dr. Disco will take care of them. There was a small pause, after which Aurora just blankly said,
You have a doctor named Disco on board?
Now, Mr. Cart shook his head. What did I say about asking questions? Now get your people ready.
Will do. Oh, and now that I think about it, we may actually have something to pay you back with. On the way here we found a derelict ship drifting through hyperspace. Thought we could salvage it, but it was too battered, so we stripped all we could from it. And there was this encrypted data storage inside, at least I hope that's what it is, with markings of Galatia Academy from Ankira. I'm willing to bet they'd pay you something if you bring it back.
Very well. Then that certainly is enough of a payment for me. Bring it over, I'll take a look at it once we have some time. Within next hour, the remaining crew members of Olympus Construction were delivered to their new fleet and distributed across all ships. Some were indeed in need of medical assistance, but all of them were tired, hungry, and in far more desperate need of personal hygiene. But most of all, they were grateful for being rescued and eagerly took to their new posts, hoping that this venture would not end as badly as the previous one. Their leader Aurora decided to stay on CLS Second Chance, where she was assigned as one of the sensor operators. She also tried to thank Mr. Cart personally, only to be stopped by Varuna, who explained that the door to Captain's cabin will remain locked, no matter what.
Fine, if that's the way he runs things, then I'm not gonna object, Aurora said, unfazed. So were there people out there, that's for sure.
And that was it for the second planet. The fleet couldn't even hope to get closer to the surface, so they moved on, leaving behind dead Ludic colonists and hordes of murder bots that killed them. But their job in this system was not yet done. There was another planet Mr. Cart wanted to check, a barren, irradiated world further away from the sun. It wasn't habitable, and it certainly had no outposts or settlements, but everyone agreed that if any survivors tried to hide and wait the remnants out, they could use radiation clouds on the surface of this world to hide. Sadly, the machines had the same idea, and there were no survivors on that last planet as well. Instead, a couple of broken ships drifted silently through space near it, the lucky few who were not on the surface when the attack came, but were still too late to escape destruction. Mr. Cart ordered the hulks stripped from all valuables, for there was no way to repair any of them there. Still, it wasn't a complete bust. When salvaging teams were bringing in the goods, they found out that every still working navigational computer had the exact same set of coordinates punched into them. Zala said that it might have been coordinates of an evacuation point, a place where survivors could rally in case of trouble, in a completely different system. And while Olympus people wanted to get back to the core, Mr. Cart set course for those coordinates. The fleet dodged the remnant patrols, again thanking their boss for his almost magical signature jammer which obscured their presence, left the system and followed the trail left by dead Luddites, only to find that, at the end of it, there was nothing. The system designated as evacuation point was empty, and there were no signs of life anywhere near it. They flew around for a few days, trying to look for anything, but the place was barren. Almost too barren, as some people whispered. After all, if they found these coordinates, the machines could have gotten them as well, and that thought was enough for Mr. Cart to accept that there was nothing else he could do here, so he gave the order for the ships to return back to the core for some much-needed rest. Few days later, they arrived at Ilm, a small, independent world stuck between Hegemony and Persean League, where Mr. Cart decided to give his people a full day off, a very rare occurrence indeed. Most of his crew decided to use that day to drink the memory of sentient, murderous machines away, and no doubt spread countless rumors about it just to get discount on the drinks. Olympus people, on the other hand, mostly went to a communication office to tell their families and other associates about their new job, as Aurora officially disbanded her company, at least for now. Varuna also went straight for the comms, but her aim was to deliver a report from their mission to the Ludic priest and get this over and done with. She didn't even have to wait that long. By the end of the day, a return message came back. "Ah, sister, you can imagine my surprise when I heard your voice," the blurry image of the preacher said from the screen. "It would seem that I mistook you for one of the unrepentant sinners, but it is good to know that I was wrong. Still, I have to say your revelations about the remnant raid on our pilgrims wasn't exactly the news I was expecting. Still, you have done your job, so the appropriate reward has been sent with this message, and before you complain about the amount, know that life in service of the Lord is the greatest reward of all. And now excuse me, but I have to deliver your revelations to the bishops and deacons of our order, for they must know that the heretics and their godless machines are at our gates again. But should you wish to seek more absolution, sister, simply look to the sky and pray, and I'm sure the Almighty or one of his humble servants will answer. Fare thee well, and I'm looking forward to seeing you on that sermon, as you promised." Varuna barely contained the urge to spit on the ground. Instead, she walked to one of the bureaucrats who oversaw the comms, slipped him a sizable bribe, and walked out with the exact coordinates of where this pretentious message was sent from. One day, she hoped, she'd be able to pay this priest a visit. She then regrouped with the rest of the officers from the fleet, and realized that they were very busy, digging up new contracts for the company to follow. There were quite a few jobs to do, all seemingly profitable, so when she came back to the ship, she expected Mr. Cart to be all giddy with excitement. Instead, he barely noticed as she entered his cabin, staring blankly at the screen. There was no reaction, even when she told him about all the money they could make. It was as if he wasn't listening at all, and when he finally said something, it was completely unrelated. "Tell me, Varuna, do we still have contacts on Derinkuyu Station?" I hope so. Assuming the Union people are still in charge there, then yes. Why? Did you find us a job there? No, not really. But do try and contact that foreman, if I remember correctly, when you have some time. Tell him that's... You know what? Forget about it. We can't really do anything there, not without investment money. Investment? We buying something, boss? Yes. No, well, kinda... forget about it. Let's actually not go to Ankira for a while, alright? Sure, but don't we have that academy drive with us? Should be easy money in it. Fly in, get reward, fly out. Yes, but I want to examine it first. It looks interesting. He lied, unconvincingly. It's just a data drive. Boss, I almost never see you anxious, and now that I do, it makes me anxious as well. Just tell me what's going on before you do something crazy. I'll try, he replied distantly. But I'm not sure it's a good idea for your own safety. You just have to trust me. I have a plan. You know, boss, those were the exact same words you said before that trip when we lost everything except our miserable lives. I won't press, but try not to get us killed for whatever the hell you have planned, okay? I promise, Mr. Cart said and shuddered. Because at this point, even he himself had no idea if he was lying.